What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 25 preview. So I'm going to go through the FA Cup 5th round draw and what that might mean for chip strategy. Then I'm going to answer a bunch of your questions on the double game week, Erling Haaland, Bournemouth midfielders, and all that good stuff. So let's get into it. So let's start with a quick look at the FA Cup 5th round draw. This screenshot was taken before both Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest had played their 4th round matches. We now know that both of those teams are through to the 5th round. A few people asked how this might impact chip strategy. Not a massive amount at the moment. The main information that we got from the 4th round is that Liverpool, Spurs and Chelsea are all out of the FA Cup. And that's important because whoever gets through to the FA Cup semi-finals will blank in 34 and so will their opponents. And in Game Week 34, Liverpool are due to play Spurs at home. Both teams out of the FA Cup, that match will definitely be on. Similarly, Chelsea are playing Everton at home in 34. Everton are also out of the FA Cup. That match will definitely be on. So if you were someone that didn't want to play your free hit in 29, you can just manage it with free transfers. You were going to save it for the blank in 34 instead. Your free hit team in 34 in isolation for that week specifically will now look a bit better because you can pick the likes of Palmer, Salah, Gakpo, Van Dijk, etc. The knock-on effect is if you don't have a blank game week, there's no fixture to rearrange. Therefore, there's no double game week. So we know that Liverpool are doubling in 25 against Wolves at home and Villa away. Because they're now out of the FA Cup, it's quite likely they won't double again this season. Same for Palmer at Chelsea. He might not have a double game week for the rest of the season. It's not impossible. There are various scenarios where it could happen, which I'm not going to get into in this video. If you want to check that out, follow Ben Crellin on Twitter, Planet FPL and YouTube podcast. They'll talk through that. But for the most part, it is quite likely after 25 that Salah and Palmer, two of the biggest hitters this season, will not have a double. So if you want to triple captain Salah in a double game week, this is probably your best opportunity in 25. You may not get another chance to do it. Obviously, you can use the triple captain in a single game week. It's not the end of the world. But if you want to use it on a double on Salah, 25 is probably the week to do it because he may not have a double for the rest of the season. Does this mean that free hit 34 is less ideal now? Because even if Salah and Palmer don't double, you might want to keep hold of them. Not necessarily. There are still going to be blanks in 34. There's going to be doubles in 33, probably 36 as well. That free hit could be useful to manage the rest of the season. It doesn't mean you've got to save it. You could use it in 29 if that's better for your team. And if later on, once we've got through more FA Cup rounds, blank game week 34 looks pretty easy to manage, you can just use the free hit in a double game week instead. You can still kind of, for want of a better word, wing it for a little bit longer. You don't have to decide in 25 exactly what the rest of your chip strategy is going to look like this season. And realistically, the 5th round hasn't helped a huge amount in terms of the draw itself. Those matches will be played on the weekend of the 1st of March, which is before game week 28. We'll then know who's through to the quarterfinals. That will give us an idea of who's going to get through to the semi-finals, but obviously nothing's a guarantee until the matches have been played. For the 5th round, a lot of Premier League teams were kept either apart from each other or the stronger team based on what we've seen so far this season is at home, apart from probably Man United. So Villa are at home to Cardiff, Palace are at home to Millwall. Both of those Premier League teams will be favourites. Man United at home to Fulham. Fulham have probably played better this year, but Man United will have home advantage, so they will be the favourites to go through. Newcastle home to Brighton, Bournemouth home to Wolves, Man City home to Plymouth Argyle, and then Forest are at home to Ipswich. So we're going to get quite a few Premier League teams through to the next round, and then we just got to see who gets each other. Obviously, if Man City play Man United, it's quite likely that Man United will go out. But if Man United end up getting the winners, or Man United or Fulham, I should say, end up getting the winners of Preston North End versus Burnley from the 5th round, then it's quite likely they will get through to the semi-finals. Therefore, we know they will probably blank in 34, and then we can start thinking about it a bit more. But for now, I wouldn't say this information has massively helped. Whatever your strategy already was, whether that's definitely free hitting in 29, definitely not, or just waiting a bit longer, I would just carry on doing that. So let's get into some of your questions. Would you sell Trent to get Slot, and who to replace Trent with? Now, I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. Liverpool are playing against Everton in the final game of Game Week 24 Wednesday evening. That will give us more information about Trent's fitness. What we have right now is the press conference from Slot on Tuesday, and he said that Trent did part of the session yesterday, which would have been Monday, and the hope is that he will train with the squad fully today on Tuesday, and then a decision will be made over his possible involvement versus Everton. From what we saw on the Liverpool Twitter account on Tuesday, he did take part in full training. So there is a chance that he'll be in the squad for the Everton game, and then it's just a case of whether he's off the bench or starts. For what it's worth, I think it's very unlikely that Trent will start because Bradley was fully rested in the FA Cup, probably with a view to play him against Everton. So I would say if Trent comes off the bench and looks fine and Slot is positive going into that Wolves game, I would probably keep Trent. Because I think Wolves at home and Villa away is such a good double game. Obviously, it's a really good double for Slot as well. But I think if I've already got Trent and we're quite confident he's going to play both games, I would keep hold of him. If there's any doubt, I would sell him. And if you want to get Slot, obviously you've got to go for a non-Liverpool defender. I think the player I would probably bring in is a Bournemouth defender. Now, if you look at the transfers in for defenders this week so far, if I can just find it here, Kerkez has the most transfers in, over 180,000, and it makes a lot of sense. Southampton away, Wolves at home, next two. Brighton away in 27 and Spurs away in 28 for a defender not quite so good, but 29 is a home game against Brentford. They definitely play. Ipswich at home in 30. Investing in a Bournemouth defender long term looks quite good. I would be tempted to pick up Howson instead of Kerkez. Like, Kerkez is now 5 million. That feels quite expensive, whereas Howson's only 4.4, so you're saving 0.6 million. It does feel a little bit like Anderson and Castagna versus Robinson from Fulham, but I would take the cheaper defender. I think Kerkez is quite attacking, but not enough to warrant spending an extra 0.6. So that is probably where I would go. Like, if you don't have an Arsenal defender who will now also play in 29, you could pick up someone like Gabriel, but most people already have their Arsenal defender. If you're definitely free hitting in 29, you don't own Munoz, you could look at him as well. But I think for most people, it would probably be Kerkez, but I'd only, or Howson, I should say, but I'd only do it if Trent doesn't play at all tonight and there's not too much positivity from Slot in the press conference ahead of game week 25. So this is a good follow-up question. Is it worth selling Gakpo to make space for Moyes to Slot? And I'm quite glad I'm answering this question before the Liverpool-Everton game, so there's less outcome bias in my answer. For what it's worth, I think this decision is quite close. And if you're happy with your team by getting Slot, I think that's fair enough to do. My instinct is that you should just be moving to Unai Emery. If you've got Moyes and 3 Liverpool players, and you know those 3 Liverpool players are first choice, you should probably just keep them and go to Unai Emery. I guess my question back to people thinking about this would be, why didn't you free up the Liverpool player in 24? Is it because you thought Moyes was pretty good for 24 and Unai Emery is bad for 25? Fair enough, but I'm not sure that is necessarily true. Like, Moyes has Leicester at home, Unai Emery's got Ipswich at home. Like, Villa are a stronger team than Everton, although defensively, obviously, they've got problems at the moment. And then they were both playing Liverpool in the second game anyway. So I don't think a case can really be made that Moyes was great for 24, but Unai Emery is terrible for 25. I think they're quite similar. So if you've got like Gakpo, Salah, Van Dijk, whoever it might be, or Trent, Salah, Gakpo, whatever combination you've got, if you didn't make that call to sell one of them in 24, I wouldn't necessarily make that call to do it in 25 instead. I'll be honest, I suspect that what happens tonight will majorly impact what people will do. If Liverpool end up smashing Everton, I think most people would just want to go for Slot, because Wolves at home looks like an almost banker for a win. And then Villa away, if they've smashed Everton away, people will think that they can go and do it to Villa as well. But my instinct is that you just go to Unai Emery and just hope that Villa can get a draw against Liverpool. Or bonus, obviously, would be a win would be massive. But even if you get the draw, you're ahead of anyone that's got Slot. Similar situation to those that have got Moyes for tonight's game. The only time I would definitely sell the Liverpool player is if there's any doubts about the minutes. So if you're concerned about Gakpo for 25 more than you were for 24, fair enough. If Trent is injured, then obviously you can sell him as well. But for the most part, if you've got 3 pretty nailed-on Liverpool players, I think I would just go Moyes to Unai Emery rather than freeing up the Slot, because I would have just done it last week instead. Yeah, be interesting to see how tonight's game plays out. So I'm thinking about rolling with no Aston Villa players. What do you think of that? I think that is a perfectly reasonable strategy to go with if it works best for your team. I would find it difficult to do because I like having as many double game week players as possible, but it's worth saying I have Rodgers in my squad already. I might not add any more Villa players. So 0 versus 1, it's not that much of a difference. I think Villa are similar to Everton in 24. The double is pretty good this week. I know Liverpool is tough, but I see that as a bonus fixture. Ipswich at home on its own is decent enough. But then the fixtures after that aren't great. Chelsea at home, Palace away, Brentford away. And Villa actually blank in 29. At least with Everton, if I've got like Mikalenko, as long as he stays fit, I can bench him. And I can rely on him in 29 to play against West Ham at home if I really need him. You don't even have that with Aston Villa players. So I think clean sheets look tough after the double. Like Ipswich at home is probably fine, but outside of that, I don't see a huge amount. They've got big defensive problems as well. Rodgers is good. Marlon and Rashford are risky for minutes. You've got Watkins, who's a fitness doubt right now. I think it's fine if you want to avoid Aston Villa. If Watkins is given the all clear, I'd find it very difficult to go without, and I will probably bring him in. But I understand the predicament that people are in, because for most FPL squads, the easiest way to get Watkins is to sell Isak, and people don't want to do that. That is absolutely fair enough. And I'll tell you now, if Isak does well against City, people are going to probably regret having Watkins in their squad longer term. So that's a consideration. Like, I might be able to get Watkins without selling Isak, but I don't know. I get why people don't want to buy him. Midfields are kind of stacked right now. Salah, Palmer going nowhere for most people. Lots of people have just got in Burmo. Loads of people looking at Bournemouth midfielders. If you don't have a slot for Rodgers, you certainly aren't freeing up a slot for Marlon or Rashford. And then defensively for Aston Villa, you know, most people probably don't need a new goalkeeper right now. And Martinez is not that useful to you after 25. So for my team, for example, I've got Pickford and Fabianski. If I could work it so that the money wasn't needed, that I could do. So I've got 1.4 million in the bank, right? I could do Fabianski to Martinez and play Martinez for the double and then just have Pickford after that. But obviously that takes a lot more money out of the rest of my squad, and I don't really want to do that. So if you could work a way to get to get Martinez as well as your main playing keeper, maybe that works. But it's not that nice of a setup, I don't think. Konsa's injured. We don't know how bad that injury is, but I suspect he's going to be out for Ipswich at home. Cash, Pau Torres injured. Mings is injured as well. So you've got Luca Dean, who may not play the full game in either of the fixtures against Ipswich or Liverpool because you've got Maatsen there. And then you've got Dizazi, who's only 4.2. So he could be on your bench most weeks. But he's like the only fit centre-back that Villa have got at the moment. So I'm just not sure I see a huge amount of clean sheets. So I think it's fine. I think it'd be nice for most people if they had one or two Villa players, especially if Watkins is fit. But if you want to go for zero, I don't think you'll be regretting it from 26 onwards. So if you are going to go for a Bournemouth midfielder this week, who is the best option to go for? For what it's worth, whoever you pick out of Semenyo, Utara and Kluivert is a decent pick right now. You cannot go massively wrong. And that's not me sitting on the fence. I just think that is the reality at the moment. So for example, if you're sat there thinking Kluivert's great, but I don't have 5.9 million, I wouldn't necessarily be making a second transfer to free up that money. I would just go and get Utara at 5.1 instead, because he's also really good. If I had to pick an order, I'd probably go Kluivert number 1, then Semenyo, and then Utara. Although I'm not completely sure about that order. Like when I look at the open play goal threat, for example, Kluivert's actually the worst, 0.21 XG per 90. Then Semenyo 0.31, and then Utara is 0.44. So he's actually the best, and he's playing as Bournemouth's number 9 right now, and he's the cheapest option. So in some ways, I think he is the one to go and get. The reason that I've put him third, and that doesn't mean he's bad, by the way, I'm thinking long-term minutes. I think if you're only picking up these players for like the next 3 or 4 games, it probably doesn't matter. They're all going to play quite a lot. But long-term, bearing in mind that after 29, the Bournemouth fixtures are good, they might double in 33 as well. I think Kluivert's minutes are probably better than Utara, and you've got penalties as well. That's why he's number 1. Semenyo, based on the information we've had most of this season so far, he's pretty much nailed for 90 minutes when he's fit. No matter who else is available for Iraola in that Bournemouth team, Semenyo always plays. That's why I've got him number 2. That hasn't always been the case with Utara. For what it's worth, by the way, sometimes teams get injuries and it forces a manager to try different things, and that thing really works. And right now, Kluivert, Semenyo and Utara playing close to 90 minutes each most weeks is working really well. Maybe Iraola just keeps this moving forward. But you've got to think when players start getting fit again, Tavernier, Evan-Nielsen, etc., the minutes will start to be more limited than they are right now. I think Semenyo will be pretty much unaffected, and then Kluivert will probably be less affected than Utara. It's really close. If you've just heard all that and thought, what are you talking about? I'm just buying Utara, I'd be, yeah, fair enough. I really would not argue against it. I'm almost certainly going to buy a Bournemouth midfielder in 26. Probably not this week because I don't need one. Although if Eze is injured, I probably will buy one. I'm probably going to go Kluivert. But if I work out that later on by going Utara, that frees up more money for a better move, I'll just buy him instead. I'm really not tied to Kluivert being absolutely miles better than the other two. So Kluivert, Semenyo, Utara is probably my order for the reasons mentioned. They're all decent though. So is Erling Haaland worth bringing back in as a differential? I think Haaland still has a big part to play in terms of how the rest of this FPL season goes. And he will come back into the conversation, but I don't think we need to worry about him right now. When will we need to think about him? Well, game week 29, Man City have got Brighton at home. That week, Salah blanks and Palmer's got Arsenal away. So when you look at the fixtures for game week 29, on paper, Haaland against Brighton at home is probably the best option. And I don't think he's going to be a differential captain that week, but I don't think his captaincy levels are going to be similar to, say, what Salah will be in 25. Because to get him for 29, you either need to free hit, which not everyone will do, or you need to sell someone like Palmer or Salah to get the funds. It's going to be very difficult without selling one of those two players, and not everyone is going to want to do that because they've got lots of money tied up in them. So he's not going to be a differential captain, but he will be an interesting one against Brighton. Alternatives will be like Chris Wood against Ipswich away, Bournemouth midfielders against Brentford at home, and Bournemouth against Bournemouth away. You could even just go for Palmer against Arsenal away, but on paper he's a nice differential-ish option, Erling Haaland against Brighton at home. And then also you've got that Leicester at home fixture in game week 30, and that week he will be a differential captain because when you look at Palmer, he's got Spurs at home and Salah's got Everton at home. So you could easily just go for one of those two. Those people that have kept Haaland in their teams, that is a big differential opportunity in game week 30. So he will come back into the conversation. Also, it's worth keeping in mind that with Liverpool and Chelsea out of the FA Cup, unlikely to double for the rest of the season, City have got Plymouth in the 5th round. They're almost certainly getting through to the quarterfinals. They'll be favourites, whoever they play against, to get to the semi-finals pretty much anyway. And therefore, they'll blank in 34 and they'll have another double. So Haaland is going to be a big part of the rest of the season, especially when Salah and Palmer probably won't double. But I don't think we need to worry about him right now. Like 25 Newcastle at home, okay, nice differential, but you're almost certainly captaining Salah. Game week 26, he plays Liverpool at home. I think right now, the way the two teams are playing, most people would rather captain Salah away to Man City than Haaland at home to Liverpool. And also, in 26, like Palmer's got Villa away if you really don't want to go for Salah or Haaland. So it's not that bad. Like Isak's got Forest at home. There's other options. Game week 27, when City have got Spurs away, which is not a bad captain opportunity for Haaland. Like Palmer's literally got Southampton at home. Like we're all going to go there, aren't we? And then 28, Salah's got Southampton at home. So that's what I mean by rest of the season, Haaland's going to have a big set. And to be honest with you, once I wildcard, I'm pretty sure it's going to have Haaland in that team. I haven't thought about it too much, but I suspect it will because I think he'll almost certainly double later on. But for the next 4 game weeks, I'm probably not that worried. I will consider how to get him in 29 without free hitting, and it may involve selling Cole Palmer. But I think outside of that, I'm not particularly worried until we get to 30 onwards. So you could bring him back as a differential. I think you've probably got more important things to worry about right now, though. Can I just say that I don't plan questions for these videos? I just put a tweet out and see what people respond with. So this is the final one. What do we do with Bruno Fernandes? Is it worth taking a -4 to bring in Rodgers or in Burmo? My instinct would be don't sell Fernandes for a hit. I get that people are frustrated with him. I get that he's often playing in that deeper role now. It doesn't mean that he can't get forward. He's still on penalties. The minutes are still good, but it's not as good as him playing in number 10. There's a lot of frustration there, but I don't think it's worth taking a -4. If you've got free transfers and you want to go Bruno to Rodgers for the double game week, that gives you money to go and get Watkins or whatever move it might be. Fair enough. I don't think Bruno Fernandes is essential to hold on to. But I don't think he's so bad you've got to start taking hits unless it enables something massive for your team. Spurs away, Everton away, Ipswich at home. Next 3 are still pretty good. He definitely plays in 29 against Leicester away. He's still a good option. Not essential. I will be honest, I was considering how to get Fernandes back in my team at some point, and I may do it, but I'm less likely to than I would have been a few weeks ago. Even I am having slight second thoughts about how good of an option Bruno is right now. By the way, I didn't mention it when I was talking through captaincy just a minute ago. Fernandes against Leicester away is not a terrible option either. Like, we've got Chris Wood, Erling Haaland in that blank in 29. Fernandes against Leicester away? Maybe. I know Man United struggled against Leicester away in the FA Cup for a large part of that game, but maybe an option. But either way, I probably wouldn't sell for a -4. Do I think Mbeumo is better than Fernandes right now? I don't know, maybe a little bit, but it ain't enough for a hit. So don't take a hit. If it's for free and you're sick of him, fair enough. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'll be back with my team selection video tomorrow, so I'll catch you then.